Good evening. Usually on Fridays, Sokuzan is giving the basic Buddhist teachings, but he is in the 10-day solitary retreat. Won't be out until I think next Thursday. So he'll be back at it, doing this particular class. And so rather than give you some basic Buddhist teachings, I'd rather just take questions on anything you want to ask about. It can be in that area, of course. Anything to do with Buddhism or meditation or chicken tallow. Sure.
Sokuzan, what is the universality of the guru?
So universality of the guru is a topic that Trungpa Rinpoche covered, I think in Pengju and in other places too. There's a guru means teacher, universality, it just means that it's everywhere. And it seems to be necessary to first have a living teacher that can show you and that inspires you in such a way that you actually become his or her or their student. So that you begin to understand what that dynamic is about. And then they introduce you to and this is, I'm kind of paraphrasing Trungpa, they introduce you to your world. They introduce you to the world that you've been covering up with your ideas, your opinions, your judgments, your hope and fear, etc. If that is, if they're able to do that, then everything becomes your teacher. And sometimes you'll hear people say, well, everything is my teacher. And they're probably just would like that to be the case, but it is not the case necessarily. So that just means that the other end of that particular statement is always a student, always receiving everything as if it's completely fresh and new and you have no idea what it is. That way you can learn not just in the relative way of gathering information, but learn in a fundamental way with consciousness only. You can see what this is. You actually see what this is. I just said, I think to this morning that I've been reading about deep consciousness, near-death experiences and so on. I'm saying this is, for me, this is a near-death experience right now. I don't have to die to see this. You don't either. But
Sokuzan, something you say you don't teach or work with is everything the teacher says that I will do. And I feel like you've talked about we need to use our intelligence to even with working with the teacher.
yes.
How do we use that intelligence when the ego is kind of taking claim of that intelligence? And
Well, you're kind of explaining this. You need to be aware. You've been meditating a lot over the last number of years. You just sat for 30 days in a solitary retreat, and I assume you're meditating, were you? Did anybody come and check on you? Oh yeah, there was people checking on you all the time. We watched you like a hawk, binoculars. No, we know. I know you were sitting. I know you're practicing. So it starts to show up that way. Just the way you ask the question shows that you're already aware of that structure in the ego, the self-centered part of the mind. It's unlikely that's going to get too much of a foothold there, as long as there's a relationship to the three jewels, to the teacher, the teaching, and community. Then it's more difficult for that to gain any kind of traction more.
Sokuzan, what's happening with the student or with me when the teacher gives an instruction and my intelligence is contrary to that?
It's very situational. You might actually talk to the teacher about that. In our situation, you would. I'm right here every day. I'm nothing like either one of my teachers. My two, Trungpa Rinpoche and Kobunchi Roshi, not anything like them, other than I'm a teacher. But I don't function like either one of them. What?
Sokuzan, I'm thinking of your teaching of do it anyway. Is there or do you recommend even at times to go against our intelligence and just do what the teacher says?
Well, there's going to be times for that. I don't think if you have any, if you have doubts about it, then you could probably just wait a little bit. It's not an either or. But yeah, I wouldn't just do your marching orders necessarily. There's gonna be some of that, even the sitting practice of meditation, you're kind of giving the teacher the benefit of the doubt. The teacher and the teachings themselves are saying, you're going to have to train your mind to see this. You're not going to be able to figure this out. That figuring things out is on the mundane path. And there are teachers who are still caught in that figuring things out mentality. Not wrong. Some people, that's the teacher they need. They need a teacher that helps them figure things out. So they should do that. But I want you, as a teacher, I want you to see what this is. That's what I was taught by both of my teachers. See what it is yourself. So to some extent, they left me stranded.
Shadow bowing. It looks to me like you'll, even if a student doesn't do anything that you say, you'll still meet with them, you'll still teach them.
Sure.
Is there one basic thing that we have to uphold to be your student? Is there anything you require from a student?
Don't leave. Stay here. Stay here. Don't leave. Don't go away. Continue to return to the teacher, and how you return you may have one interview every couple of months. You may have may talk to me every day, interact with me just about every day in some way. Everyone's so different in this area. Don't you think? I mean, what you've seen, everyone's very different.
Yes.
More about that if you have it. Good area for questions. I have about 15 responses, but I need 2 questions for each one of them.
Shadow bowing. I think
Is this one of them?
the question kind of comes out of like not wanting to miss an opportunity to work with you,
Sure.
to get the teachings as much as I can. Is that a misunderstanding? Are we always getting
I think it's unlikely with the connection that all of us have here, especially those who've lived here for a number of years, even if you're not fully ordained as a monk, it's pretty strong connection that we all have. But everybody is learning and understanding in a different speed, or they're dealing with a different set of forms of the way passion, aggression, and ignorance shows up to cloud the truth of your true nature, which is, I'm telling you right now, is not separate from anything else. It's separated all to hell. It's very separate. But the fundamental understanding can be seen right while consciousness is still showing up as a living form, as a body with a history and so on, which is all unreal. But you begin to see the reality of what this is, and you begin to function out of it. At the same time, you're having all the emotions and feelings that you've ever had. They just don't add up to a self that's having those. The consciousness is having it. Consciousness only. Consciousness is everywhere. It has no location. It shows up wherever there's some kind of resonance. But oh no.
Divine, what do you mean by you're experiencing a near-death experience? You are living a near-death experience.
Well, it's another way of saying this is already not here. And the way in which it's already not here is it's been seen to be an illusion. So therefore it's here somewhat, but it's like not existing. Because even though the emotions come up and look for somebody, as you've heard me say this probably 100 times, they can't find a solid being anymore, because you've seen that that's not real. You're no longer believing in a solid self that is me. And I would say Sokuzan, or my given name, Robert Brown, that person was no longer here.
Divine, so many of the near-death experiences start out with a feeling of freedom, liberation,
Yeah.
light, peace. Do you experience that
Yes,
as part of?
yes. I just don't say much about it. But if you ask me directly, then of course I'm going to say yes. But the reason I don't say anything about it is I'm not encouraging you to look for that. Because what you have to look for, you need to look at. If you want to look for something, stop doing that. just look at what's ever in front of you, because whatever's in front of you is that which is blocking your true nature. And when you look at the wall, every single one of you, including this person, you sit down and look at whatever rises, you're actually looking at the blockage. I don't care how it feels, whether it's a good feeling, a bad feeling, a neutral feeling, or whether it changes from one to the other and rotates this way and that way. Just observe, observe, observe. If you can, don't conclude, but if you do conclude, then just observe the way you continue to vomit on everything. There's a clarity and you just barf on it. If you would rather be somebody going somewhere than see the fundamental truth that there is no where and there is no one and there's nowhere to go. If you see that, you're not separate from anything. I don't care if it's a zillion miles away, you're not separate from it. It's not relative knowledge. More? Sir.
And what is it about looking at the five skandhas that shows us that the self is illusory?
That the self is illusory? Very good question. So this is traditional Buddhist teachings. Thank you. I get to talk about traditional Buddhist teachings without even comparing, unless you call the last half a century of preparation. Form is this, basically this, and then the other four of the five skandhas are all consciousness. In other words, form and then feeling and then perception and then concept, consciousness, or the six sense fields and their objects. By looking at seeing this form, being very aware that this form has its own kind of presence, being in a physical area. But then if you look at the other four, feeling, the feelings are here and they're kind of with the body, but they aren't exactly the body, but a little bit, but not quite so much, but yeah, kind of. And it's just a very vague area. So look at that form, feeling, and then perception, and then that's tied in sometimes with the impulse and perception impulse. That means that you perceive something, and then there's an impulse that comes up that telling you what it is, whether it's threatening or whether it's comforting or whether it's of no consequence. Passion, aggression, ignorance again rotates around in that area. And then the conceptual mind has the structures which you're very familiar with. Being an attorney, you have to use that conceptual mind constantly to generate your livelihood, and you're probably pretty good at it. So you have had a lot of work, a lot of exercise in that area because you make your living doing that. So you're using that. Not that everyone isn't using it in different ways. Some people just use it to generate a reassurance that they are somebody. You're probably doing some of that, but a lot of the time is just spent working with concepts, ideas, laws, and the application of that in this situation. But take exception in this situation, and you have all that in your memory, probably a lot of it, and at least in memory on where you can go for the references and so on. Am I getting close a little bit? Well, so that's just then the fifth skandha is all the consciousnesses, the sense of smell, taste, hearing, smelling, seeing. Everything is coming through the sense fields is coming through at the same time, and they go through the middle three, just like needles. They go right through the body, and it happens without timing. There's no stopwatch on that. It's just instant. Perception through hearing goes right back to the body through those other ones. So it hooks them all together. One who's confused will continue to rotate back and forth by having those hook on to each other to create the illusion of somebody. It's identification with a body that is conscious, simply put. But the one who is liberated, those all operate independently. So one can actually hear something without knowing what they're hearing, not immediately going into I'm hearing this, or taste something without actually taste something as taste, rather than a whole collection of stories about that particular taste and all the things around it. So you are in a very minimal, you could even say radical area of each one of the consciousnesses in the five consciousness of the sense fields, and including the mind. And so those all get together to present as me, and the emotions that come up are hooked to the other one, hooked to the body, hooked to the concepts or stories about it. If there's any kind of difficulty in that area where the perception is seen and we're not understanding what that is, or and the ego gets threatened, that part of consciousness that is the called the seventh consciousness, or that the paranoid part of the mind that's curled up into a ball of paranoia, then immediately the thought processes start to make up stories about why that's being threatened or why that shouldn't be happening this way, to create more of a link between what is showing up in the perception and the concepts. So there's no gap. So you can't actually think without having it involved with all the other aspects of me, you having your thoughts. If you become clear about this, really clear, and the 12 or the 5 skandhas stop hanging on to hands and become independent, then your ability to think goes much deeper than it does when it's limited by an ego who is operating out of open fear. Your thought can go way beyond relative knowledge, which isn't even known by psychologists or empirical scientists. They're not ready to look at this, because anytime they go in this direction, and that's not that they haven't, I've read many books in areas where they start to go in that direction and they immediately start to get full of themselves, because they think they're discovering something so wonderful that was actually discovered 2,500 years ago by the silent sage of the Sakyas, Shakyamuni. More?
So what is it about, or how does this illusory ego hold these things together or manipulate these things? To make us believe that there is this self.
That's the illusion. That does it out of fear or hope for something better. We hear people saying, "Oh, well, what gives you hope?" And people are constantly using hope in order to have some kind of a way of avoiding the absolute devastation of the present moment. I mean, this is devastating. So we always go to hope. You heard about what gives you hope, or that doesn't seem very hopeful, or hopelessness. We have heard all of those things. Those are all ego terms that have to do with a self that is having difficulty, that needs to fight against this, fight against oppression, fight. The war on drugs. I've been hearing that for 50 years. What a dumb statement to make. A war on drugs. There must be some more intelligent way of working with that rather than making war on it.
It feels like the ego has its hands on the levers of like tension in the body or something like
It
that.
does.
So I guess I'm wondering how it manipulates if it's the illusion.
So it just looks for anything that's supportive of the self-centeredness of I'm right. Well, look what she said or did, of course. And then we have a story about it that we continue to go to reaffirm it. And if you ever tried to have a discussion with somebody that has an open ended dimension to it, where no one is right or wrong, you're just discussing something. Do you know anybody you can do that with? Five people, maybe 3, maybe more, maybe 10 people that there's a real ease of working with anyone with their concepts, their ideas. They're not making any demand on you. You're not making any demand on them. It's rare to have that kind of give and take, because too much of that paranoia starts to show up, and that can show up in the form of defensiveness, or just I don't know, just even though it's something that they could approach, they will say, well, I don't know. Follow me a little bit. No? Well, one?
Yeah, I lost it.
Me too. Go ahead.
So bowing, you're talking about how the ego selects things that support itself, that illusion. Are there a lot of things that don't support that we just ignore?
Like,
Shadow bowing. I'm just wondering about like the practice of meditation can seem disjointed or not so cohesive, and I'm wondering if that's kind of how the ego works, if we just ignore all the stuff that is showing up that doesn't necessarily support a self.
Probably. Probably ignore it. Dismiss it or look away from it. There might not be any strong activity there that could be tracked or concluded. Sure.
Shadow bowing, is that like the label of confusion, like I'm confused, is that the label the ego puts over that situation? Like the area that doesn't support the self-centeredness?
Probably. So why it's so necessary to look right at the confusion rather than find reasons you're confused. It's not that those might not be relatively appropriate. It's just that you're still in the relative area of working with things with the thought process, thinking, trying to figure things out. And you can do that. There are people that are great. The person I'm always picking on is, what is his name? Jordan something. Huh?
Peterson.
Jordan Peterson. If you've ever listened to him, an extremely intelligent person. There's no mind training there. So the person is just fundamentally enamored of himself and his intelligence. And he should be. He's really smart. But with no mind training, he's just a long list of ideas and concepts and conclusions and discursiveness that goes into analyzing everybody, kind of making everybody look a little bit foolish. He doesn't do it totally. He gives people a chance to actually listen to him. He isn't so outrageous that people just don't like him anymore. They like him because he's so smart. And they get enamored of how good he is at handling concepts and ideas. And when he interacts with them, he's just so skillful at taking the other person's argument apart and kind of wiping their nose in it. And people kind of like that, just like they like politicians who are extremely outrageous and cruel and mean, because they might like to be cruel and mean too, but they can't really do that. So they hyperventilate over people who are able to get away with that because of their extreme insanity, extreme narcissism, extreme ego. Comes from Rinpoche, calls it the Rudra of ego. The extreme, it's the one who's in hell. The ego is so powerful that it is the Lord of hell. Well, thank you. Thank you.
You and bowing. I just thought of this image and an analogy. Is a bodhisattva kind of like a puppet without a puppeteer?
I'm not saying it couldn't appear that way, but the actual bodhisattva is not even a being. It's actually gone beyond the personhood. It's just a consciousness only, operating to save all beings, put others before yourself. There could be a body-mind complex operating there, or it might be after the body has gone back into the elements. I don't know if I would call it a puppet without strings particularly. I kind of see where you're at with that, so is that helpful to think of it that way?
Your response is helpful
Hmm.
regardless. Your response was helpful regardless of the image
Okay.
that started it. Beyond bowing, how can I live beyond this body being that I'm in?
Just continue to practice, continue to sit, continue to practice Shikantaza, continue to relate with the three jewels, which you already received Jukai, so that's the Bodhisattva vow. Return to that vow, study those vows, especially the vow to be with all things. The vow to say, put others before yourself. Very difficult to do, especially when some of those beings are pissing you off. Very difficult. That doesn't mean you have to go and kiss their butt. But you might consider that some of the crap that's coming your way is coming your way because they're suffering, and they cover that up by going after you, accusing you, or arguing, and you're something like that. Shows up so many different ways, doesn't it? You've seen it, being a nurse and everything, you must run into a lot of that in coworkers and not to mention your own relationships, are just everywhere, even in Sangha. Just because we have a Sangha here doesn't mean that people don't disagree with each other or fight with each other or hold grudges against each other. It happens. And it's not incorrect. It's dependently arisen. You have to see deeply what it is. Anything that shows up in your mind stream is the Dharma. You just have to look at it without comment. Go ahead.
Being bowing. And so when anybody is coming after me and telling me what I am, I don't know who I am.
Well, you could let them have their way for a while. This doesn't mean they run your life. But you could cave a little bit. You could say, I see what you mean. And when you're saying that, it isn't like you're lying to them. You're saying, I see what you mean. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to say, you're right, or I agree with you. You say, I can see what you're getting at. And they'll say, oh, you can see what I'm getting at? So then you agree. I think you made a mistake here. You did this and you did this. And then you can have some fun with that. I'm not saying mock them. But you can interact with that in a way to engage that person wherever they're at. And eventually it will show up how much suffering they're dealing with. If they start to get mad at you, they're suffering. The anger doesn't come out of kindness wanting to help someone. The only way anger shows up out of kindness is if it's a Dharma teacher who that's the only way they can get through to a student who has asked for help. Then you might get punched by the teacher. Not physically necessarily. More about that?
Being bowing, it's when. So let's go back to that again. When somebody is coming after me and telling me what I am, it's as if that's the complete truth, and then
Yes.
and then everything has to be questioned. I don't know where to go when that happens. Where do I go?
Well, you can lead.
I can what?
You just walk away. You could say, yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way. I mean, I'm not talking, I am not talking about agreeing with it, but you could stay on the same frequency. Can you say more? Say more about that. So really, if somebody accuses you or says someone starts taking what was said in, I think it's a 12-step program, but they say someone's taking your inventory. It's a very kind of handy phrase. And someone's doing that, and it's just their ideas, their opinions, their conclusions, which may have quite a bit of accuracy to that. Still, you don't have to agree or anything. You don't have to disagree. You don't have to do anything. Can you say more? I'm not saying prove it. You don't say prove it. Prove that you're right. You can say more about that. Then maybe when you do that, they might go in an area that might create a little bit more communication in terms of understanding. Say if somebody at work, somebody in your business situation, I know occasionally you run into some real roadblocks, I'm calling them, with just people that you have to work with that are just asses, pretty much. At least that was the description you gave me. I kind of concluded that they're just really difficult people to work with. Most people have no mind training at all, but even the people that have mind training can still be really, really difficult to work with. People are training their minds. A lot of the stuff they had been able to cover up or hide out from or pretend wasn't there starts to come up more.
Being bowing, I'm wondering if by working with others, are we working with ourselves?
Always. Insofar as you can receive everything that's happening with so-called others. Your close relationships, distant ones, all the Sangha, just receive as much as you can. And notice how some things you're receiving are also irritating or aggravating. But be considerate of others. Other people are suffering. That's why they're sometimes functioning in a way that's not so pleasant. That's the way people get rid of their suffering quite often. On the world scene, they actually attack other people with weapons and kill them. They kill people that are not doing anything to them just because they can. And because they have some kind of a operating procedure agenda about it that just includes a lot of what we call innocent people. Yes, sir.
Shadow bowing, I'm thinking of the image, like we have to walk on ego like an old shoe to wear it out. And especially in the Sangha, I'm thinking of how, and you sometimes even say there might be some past life stuff that's coming up that's intense. If we have a friend in the Sangha that sort of shows up, if we continue to return to that, will that wear itself out like the shoe?
You're gonna have to be more specific. I'm not gonna guarantee anything. Can you be more specific?
Does continuing to return to a situation wear it out?
It could. There's no guarantee of that because the way in which you return might be more of an idea you're having about it that you're returning. Rather than actually returning to it. But actually returning to it, there won't be any credential there. And if you return to it twice, it will not look the same. Nothing lasts. If you think that this, 2 weeks from now, when you look at it, is the same as it was 2 weeks ago, that's the very nature of fixation and opinions and self-centeredness and ignorance takes on that kind of a structure all the time. More.
Shadow bowing. So what's happening when it looks like a person is triggering the same thing over and over again?
Some person is acting in such a way that is triggering the same thing in your mind stream.
And it looks like it's repetitive.
Well, the repetitive may be the stuff you're covering up. That person's acting like this and they're acting like that, same tone of voice, a little bit different action each time. Might not always be exactly the same thing, but you may be triggering something that you need to look at. That's you're getting close to the area of the universality of the teacher, the guru. When you see that everything is teaching you, especially the people that you have the most difficulty with. And in a Sangha, that's a powerful situation to realize that in a Sangha, the people in your community, in your Sangha, just interacting with them. And the teacher is also a member of the Sangha. Not that there's a membership list or anything.
Shadow bowing. Do you recommend returning to those difficult situations so that we can see what that is?
No. Don't return to anything. Just receive. Don't set up a standard or structure whereby you're going to deliberately go in and look at stuff. That's more for therapists and psychoanalysts and so on. And they can do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But they're not, I'm saying don't have some kind of a mindfulness practice. Maybe they do. But the emphasis here is coming from this person who is saying, sit down, hold still, watch the movement. And doing that is also being aware of how you can't quite do that. How every time you sit down, you just daydream, or every time you sit down, you fall asleep. Every time you sit down, you just sit around, grind your teeth around some difficult situation. That's shikantaza. There's no guaranteed outcome other than awareness. Watch.
Shadow bowing. What is the receiving? Yeah, it's really confusing to me even to ask that.
What's so confusing about receiving?
No, what I didn't ask was confusing, so I stopped. It sounded like you were saying that there was a difference between receiving and returning. Is that the case?
The way you seem to be talking about returning is returning to work on something. Return to the cushion, return to the teacher, return to the teaching, return to the community. That's what I'm talking about. But as far as returning to a particular psychological structure in your mind of whatever it may be, I don't know, is it pride or some aspect of consciousness you could define? Don't return to that. It'll be back soon. Wait till it shows up. When it shows up, then receive it. It's the receiving, not the going back and figuring out, calculating. Don't do that. And if you find yourself fundamentally doing that anyway, then go ahead, do that. There's nothing to correct. My recommendation is do it with awareness, but you may have to spend some time thinking about that, contemplating that, or ruminating about your, whatever it may be, your pride, your jealousy, your envy, me, and all the different things that show up as myself. May have to spend time doing it. And what a better place to do it than in a monastery, in a Buddhist monastery where the teachings are being presented every single day. You can study this every day.
No, thank you.
Let me look online here see if there's someone. Naveed, you have a question? And then I'll get to you, Yuhong, after Naveed. And then I'll get to Eugene, and then I'll get to, well, anyway, get all of it. Go ahead, Naveed.
Big Bang. The first noble truth is life is suffering. I was wondering if the sufferings of life only belongs to the unawakened mind. Bowing.
No, the awakened mind, also to keep it in simple terms, like you seem to be asking about, one who is awake will still see suffering. It just won't belong to anyone. But it will see people who are suffering, who believe that they are suffering, which makes it worse. Makes it, because then there's warfare, and then there's fighting, then there's struggle. People use that word, I struggle with this, and I struggle with that. I would say, well, the first thing you could do is stop using that word. All you're doing is reinforcing your struggle. And that is about what? Ego. It's a credential, it's a pride credential. I'm just really struggling with, I've been struggling with this for years. I just can't seem to. So you might want to use your awareness to see what this is deeply. And that doesn't mean that the suffering part that you're asking about, Naveed, will go away. It may get stronger, it may get more intense, more hotter, more sharper, more abrasive. It may get stronger before it recedes. It may not recede. There's no guarantee of anything. And we don't know, this is dependently arisen, so everything that shows up as an item, suffering or whatever it is, it has some kind of causation somewhere. And it might have countless causations that bring about this single situation we call suffering in this particular concept or consciousness called Naveed, or called Ian or Jalen or Jeff, whomever. And it's about being aware of that. And it is also about seeing that there is no solid being or identity that is suffering. So you don't have to get rid of suffering.
Navi Bowing.
Yes, sir.
So the third noble truth is that, if I'm not mistaken, that the suffering can cease to exist.
So
Is that
go ahead.
sorry? Is that referring to no person? Is that referring to what you were saying about the suffering doesn't belong to any person?
Yes, yes, the sufferer, the identity of one who is suffering is seen to be unreal. It doesn't mean that there isn't an unreal kind of suffering happening, or an actual suffering at the end of the nerve endings on some in some area. I'm not saying that, so what is being referred to there, I didn't check in with the Buddha. I don't know. I teach out of what I see, not out of memorizing what the Buddha said. And I'm seeing suffering everywhere. But there's no solid being that is suffering. There's no solid being that is suffering where you're at either. But you may have to realize that first, instead of particularly concluding that you're suffering or that the suffering you experienced yesterday in an interaction with someone in your family or someone in your community didn't bring up or trigger some kind of suffering. But the suffering has a right to be there. It's dependently risen. You do not have to get rid of anything. If you want to know what to do, then see that the one who suffers, who thinks they suffer, is unreal. There is no sufferer. There is no sufferer here. There is no sufferer out there. But that is a powerful illusion that people are deluded by, and they will kill other people to get rid of their suffering. And have a whole philosophy and politics behind that to show that they're right in doing this or doing that. And they create the opposite person who comes the other direction and said, no, you're not. We have to have this or have that. It's just a war of the worlds. It's tiring. But no one, particularly other than the Buddha and other than some other teachers down through the centuries, have looked at this and seen this for what it is, a delusion or an illusion that we are deluded by. You can awaken to this. It's possible to do that. Yuhong.
Yuhong bowing. Thank you, Naveed, for asking the life is suffering question. That was my question. Now, my question number one is, we talk about doubt during the book study today, and somebody also mentioned the self-doubt. Is doubt a fear? Fundamentally, is that a fear? Bowing?
Yes. So we have doubts about who we are, where we're going, what we're doing, doubts. We might have doubts about meditation if we're doing it correctly, or doubts about the teaching. All of those things happen quite a bit. Doubts about the teacher. So let's need to do something with our life. So try to find a situation where you can give the benefit of the doubt. Look closely. If you look closely at any teacher or teaching, you can see whether there's ulterior motives in there. Are they trying to get you to join their cult? Are they asking you for, they're probably going to ask you for help, because this kind of practice doesn't produce a product or a service particularly that you can just collect on or charge for. So therefore you would have to help that person or that community or that teaching to continue. But when there's any kind of a demand coming from the teacher for anything, I think that's suspicious. I wouldn't take it away completely and saying that a teacher, that a true teacher will never demand. They may, I have no idea. It doesn't look like I will, but maybe I will. So far, so good.
Yuhong bowing. Is doubt is doubt not separate from proud, bragging?
From pride?
Yes.
Yeah, there's definitely a connection there. Pride and shame. Pride is all puffed up, and then shame is I'm worthless. I can't get anything right. I have one mistake after another, and I shouldn't even try to look better, because, or if someone compliments you, instead of going to being fluffed up and thinking finally someone is acknowledging how wonderful and how intelligent I am, instead you go to the other direction thinking, this isn't going to work for me because I feel like crap, and you're not going to change how I feel. Ego. That's odd kind of pride, but just as difficult as the one that's all puffed up. The one that's all puffed up is full of themselves, and they're going to believe their thought patterns no matter what you say. I don't care if you're their teacher. More if you have it.
No, not this one. Thank you. That's very helpful. I asked you the question about devotion. I think I want to ask again. This time is the question that I want to know. The
Yes.
relative devotion on this path, as what you mentioned, just simply return to teacher, teaching, and the three rules. I want to ask, the ultimate devotion, does that arise?
The ultimate devotion has never vanished. In that way it can't arise. It's ultimate. It has no substance. It has no existence, non-existence. It's ultimate. And in the closest, the words that come up around that have no, they just sound romantic. So I don't often use them because it's the fundamental devotion is without anyone who's devoted. It might even feel like you're not devoted because you have no particular emotion or feeling around it. You just know you have to do this. You have to do this path. You have to do this. You have to study under this teacher. You have to support this teaching person. You have to support this community. You have to support this teaching. And it won't have a lot of proof around it. There's a lot of proof there that it's probably going to fall apart, and it might be built out of that part of your consciousness we call pride. Pride in having found the true teacher.
Nihon bowing. But how can we see the relative devotion can lead to the ultimate devotion, which hasn't rise or die?
Just keep going. Just, stay in touch with, you have your karma. Ian has his karma. Augie has his karma. I can name everybody in the room. Everybody has a different combination of causes and conditions, how you were raised, how you're treated. If you wanted to go back into other dynamics that I don't mention too much, but some have to do that because that's what's showing up everywhere, not only here, but everywhere. People I talk to are what is sometimes referred to as past lives or consciousness that seems to be in another form before this form arose. Might not even belong to you. But since we're not separate from each other, it can show up in your mind stream. I'm not going to talk about here, but I have personal examples of this that say that consciousness is not dependent on a physical form. This physical form can come apart, and that consciousness keeps going. I know this, not only from experience of working with others, but in my own mind stream. I know this. This body-mind can come apart at any point, and the consciousness will not necessarily vanish.
Thank you. Bowing.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Is there another question out there? Kishi?
Jishin bowing. You said today that when we meditate, we align self with consciousness, that the self can return to consciousness, something like this. I don't remember exactly. Is this the process of receiving? Is it the description of receiving? Bowing.
Yes. Just the practices as I teach it, just observe, and whatever you're observing, if it comes your way, just receive it. And if it tends to go another way, then just observe or receive that or understand that it's going another way. It's coming apart or dissolving, or it's turning sideways, or it's turning bright red, or it's doing whatever it's doing. Just observe. Don't interfere with what is observing, with your thoughts, your opinions, your judgments, your conclusions about it, although they may be relatively correct, because you're taking, Trungpa Rinpoche referred to this in most cases, not all, spiritual materialism, using spiritual techniques to get somewhere, to control something, to be somebody, to accomplish something. You don't need to do that. You can just relax a little bit and watch what moves in the mind stream until you eventually see your true nature. Is there a guarantee? No, there's no guarantee. But I could go guarantee the other direction. If you don't train your mind, you're going to continue to spin around your thoughts, your ideas, your hopes for better and your fears for worse, right up to the time you die, and then it'll be quite a bit of fear then. Realize who you are, and realize who you are. You realize you're not actually a living being. Don't believe me. I'm not asking you to believe it. I would like you to see that. If one person hears me and realizes that, then I guess my work is done. If nobody does, then maybe this is just practice. I'll come back next time.
Disembowing, thank you. Is ego afraid of being seen? And
Yes.
referring to the meditation, and
Yeah.
this can be a reason why there is a resistance to come to the meditation cushion. Bowing.
Of course, very well. This is something that's a lot of teachers talk about this. Ego doesn't want to be seen. If it feels like it's going to be seen, then it will resort to cover-ups of various kinds, opinions, ideas, conclusions, judgments. Just believing your own thought patterns is enough. I've had students that just decide they're going to believe their thoughts, even though they've asked me to function as a teacher. As soon as they get into a situation where it's difficult, not just one person, but many, and they just believe their thoughts, so they go in another direction. What should I do about that? I don't do anything about it. I might feel sad about it. I might think, well, they kind of missed their chance there, didn't they? Is that because I have this wonderful gift and only I can see the Dharmakaya or something? No, it has nothing to do with that. Not at all. They have not made a mistake. They just are doing what their karma is leading them into. They had an opportunity to look more closely at who they were, and it looks to me like they missed it. But what do I know? Maybe they did. Maybe they are seeing differently. Maybe what they see is more advanced than Sokuzan. I'll give them that. Then they should. But you might want to look around, see if they have any students. That's usually key. Like, what was it that was it Suzuki that said, some student of his asked him, what's a young fellow asked Suzuki, who was in his 60s, what's the difference between you and me? And he says, Suzuki Roshi said, I have students and you don't. So that was quite funny, but especially someone who was very young. Unlikely they would have students. Yes.
Suku Bowing, is there anything a student could do that would sort of shut down the possibility of returning to the teacher?
Yeah, it would show up different with each person, but just believing your thoughts, or just running away. Or like I did with Coben, I just could not believe that I just believe or see or sense. I just felt like I just went from one thing to another for years. It took me over 10 years to realize what he was pointing at. And when I realized it, I was headed back there that summer to go and talk to him about it. And he died. But that doesn't mean that his teaching hadn't worked. It did. It just took me a long time. I'm extremely stubborn. And I'm full of myself and I'm full of pride. And just very, very painful and difficult realizing that. It's very embarrassing for me. More about that if you have a question there, I'd be happy to address it as best I can.
Nothing's really cool. Thank you.
Fine. Yes.
I have some questions from the UK from Ash Alm. How to override being in freeze, like a decisive deadline getting closer yet so paralyzed by inaction. It's beyond passion, aggression, or ignorance. Please help. Thank you kindly.
So I don't know, Pat.
Ath, A-T-H.
Okay. I've responded to questions from this person before. Very difficult to just generically respond, but needs to be a lot, and I'm biased here, needs to be a lot of sitting meditation, a lot of sit down, hold still. Don't practice shamatha vipassana. That's a valid practice, but the way you're talking here and the way what I'm connecting with there, it needs to be shikantaza. In other words, sit down and hold very still, and whatever occurs, watch that. That's the way you will get close to the solidification, or what I would call fixation that's happening in the mind. You're going to have to look at it, and it's not going to be comfortable, more than likely. I'm not condemning you to anything. Sit a lot, do some block sitting. Do several block sits a week, 4 hours. If you don't know what a block sitting is, then you can go on YouTube and find Sokuzan and block sitting, I guess.
Your last talk,
Last talk,
Wednesday,
I talked about it the last talk, so.
and it's out there.
Huh?
It is out there.
It is out there. You knew that. Yeah. Good luck.
Yoke bowing, Spool String, also in the UK, has a question. What would be next after being able to receive consistently bowing?
I'm going to respond to that as closely as I can to the way you stated it. And what would be next after you receive consistently? You would run out of things to receive because you can only receive something that is out there. Thank you. If you're not separate from it, you can't receive. You're not separate from anything. So like everything, it's not separate. Anything you see that might be a team of mules down the road in the dust, not separate from them. Heartbreakingly not separate from anything, including the person you meet that is suffering and doesn't really ask for your help, ignores you, goes the other direction, and continues to suffer. You're not separate from them. You watch them go away. And you don't necessarily follow it with some kind of commentary like, I could have helped them. No, you're not a therapist. You're a Dharma teacher. Or else you're just a practitioner. Maybe you can't help. Maybe it's your own fixation coming apart, breaking apart. But if the ego is there, the ego is going to laminate to that thing that's coming apart and feel like it's coming apart, and it may fight back. Just observe. Keep it very simple. Let everything come apart. Won't fix anything. Spool string. Thought I forgot who I was talking to, didn't you? Well, I like that. It's kind of what I would have done in the same situation. Okay, Jalen, go ahead.
Jalen bowing. Um, is disbelieving your thoughts just as circular as believing your thoughts?
Is believing your thoughts just as circular as what?
Jalen bowing is disbelieving your thoughts just as circular as believing your thoughts.
Yes, don't do anything with it. If you believe it, you give it a reality. If you disbelieve it, you also give it a reality. A reality that it might be even stronger, it might fight back more, trying to convince you that it's true. But don't do anything with it. Receive it. Just like watching a movie. Just observe the movie. The movie is real and that it's in front of you, but it's unreal and that it is a movie. Go home.
Yuhong Baoying. I have a question about ego. If some people question me, for example, if my husband questions me about taking the time to do nothing, facing the wall, and I often stand firmly for myself, very firmly for myself. This is very important. Is that ego too?
It's pretty hard to get away with ego in any direction. It's not important to get rid of ego or recognize it as ego or it's not ego. But I'm very happy that you are holding your ground there. And just all you have to do, you don't have to fight with them, but just tell them it's very important for me to sit still and watch my mind stream. That helps me. And if he has some awareness going on there, he'll probably see that it probably is also helping him. You may not want to give your meditation practice any credit for anything, but yeah, just keep going. Reassure him that it's okay. It's all right. I won't meditate too much. I'll only meditate 4 hours on Thursday. And it is for someone who is your partner. If you're in a relationship with somebody and they're not a meditator, it's pretty challenging for them because to them, that probably looks like a waste of time, and you could have been doing something constructive, like, painting the garage or something. But this is very important, and so I'm happy that you're practicing and training your mind, all of you, and just means a lot to me that you're doing this. Some doing more than others. There's no right or wrong to anything. Just don't get your identity from me or from anyone, from society or culture. Get it from your own consciousness, so you find out who you are. You can do that. Is there a final question, anyone?
Yuhong, can I ask you the second part? I feel like sometimes I feel bad that I want to soften regarding for my practice. I always stand very firmly for this, and even for my physical health too, because this is a basic what I think is very important for me, just no matter what. So I want to soften when I respond to, especially people I love, regarding just my husband. How can I see this important work at the same time to consider him too? Because he has no interest for now. He always knows efficiency, and he said you are too slow to do certain things, even though I'm very fast certain time. So how can I soften myself regarding what he says? Bye.
I think you're probably doing just fine. Just keep include him as much as you can. Include him as much as you can. Without particularly, don't try to get him to meditate. I don't mean that, or convince him that what you're doing is valuable. Just include him in the difficulty you have with meditation practice. Let him know that so you're including, he's your husband, so include him. I think that may be some of the issue there. He might feel somewhat excluded from your special practice you're doing. So this doesn't mean try to get him to meditate. I'm not recommending that at all. But if you just an example, and this isn't something that is a standard that you do, but if you've been sitting for a few hours and you come out, and it was difficult for you, you might share that with him, to say it was difficult to do that. Then he might say, well, why do you even do that? And then you might have to actually go a little deeper into that and say, I need to do this. It could be any number of things. Something that came up for me many, many years ago when I was asked that, I said, it keeps me honest. And so, of course, at the time that I was saying that, I didn't realize that that was my pride, and that I was continuing to be very dishonest with myself. I could have said, if I were to go back there, I would say, it helps me be aware of how much I've been deceiving myself every day and not able to fix it, because there's no person there. If you think you can fix yourself, you're just reinforcing that part of the consciousness that is unreal, and it is a self that is unreal. Just because there's a body here with this kind of haircut, or this age, or this color skin or something, that's very temporary. That is an illusion that we are deluded by. You can actually liberate yourself from this without the body changing a bit. The body will still be here. The heart will still beat, maybe for a while. You'll still eat and sleep, but your awareness is no longer limited to a simple pattern of thoughts and ideas and opinions and judgments and evaluations and memories about this and this and this. Liberated. That has no longer has any limits. That doesn't mean that your mind is out in outer space somewhere, but it's also not separate from that either. It's an understanding that cannot be conveyed in words. You cannot say what this is in words.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, you have a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think you said to Shoto, don't return on something to work on it.
Yeah.
But you said return to the cushion.
Yeah.
Is returning to the cushion not working on something?
No. Because you don't know what's going to happen on the cushion. Whereas if you return to an item, then you have a certain circularity there. But if you return to the cushion and that particular item shows up spontaneously, then you work on it. And with the way you work on it, you receive it, you look at it, you might think about it, but don't do it ahead of time. No setups. The only setup you have is the cushion the sutras, all the structures that we do in the monastery that help us, give us some kind of form so that the awareness can be liberated from what? From its attachment to forms, including the body, which is the most powerful of the forms. Not to mention thoughts, opinions, judgments, beliefs, hope and fear, so on and so forth. Just return to the question. Whatever shows up, look at it. Be aware of it more. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi shifu, shi sanggu sambo go san, wo go the 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.